Have you got a question? Want the answer? It's right here and right now. Here's more of the Mike Buck Show on AM 690 and FM 94.3. The Answer.
Okay, so we've been telling you for the last several years how important little old the island of Kauai is to the missile defense of our country. And boy, has that been borne out a lot of times. So much so that our guest Riki Ellison has to have his own car and his own hotel room, because Hawaii is a very important part of things what he does, all the way from the nation's capital in town right now. And we're talking about this an unbelievable thing that just took place. Before we get into anything, Riki, how about them 49ers?
How about them
49ers?
Old school way to win.
I'm telling you.
None of that flash that was on Sunday, man. This was the way to win the game. It's hostile environment, hostile weather conditions,
he told
and
me,
winning with defense and special teams.
Don't start me on the Niners, because then we'll get fired up here. Super Bowl rings, how many with the Niners?
Three.
Three of them, yeah.
They got the momentum. They went to Dallas, beat Dallas. Yeah. They went in here and beat Green Bay in the best team in the NFC.
Yeah, and Aaron Rodgers said that too. He said we got beat.
Yeah,
and I'm telling you, he didn't cave up.
I'll say right now that the winner of next week's game in LA is the Super Bowl champion.
Yeah, I think so too. But the interesting thing enough is they keep talking about Garoppolo maybe not coming back, and I'm thinking, come on, what are you talking about? This guy's got to be the ultra hero after doing all of these.
Well, I think the defense is the ultra heel.
Oh yeah,
and Debo's the ultra heel. So it's a team game. That's what you love about it. Yeah. It was not an offensive quarterback game here. It was a full, complete team game.
Okay, let's switch. Hopefully, we'll have time later to talk about that some more. But let's switch to the team effort needed. All over the country and all over the world. Talk about, first of all, I couldn't wait to tell everybody that we had a very, very interesting test of the THAAD system.
Well, it's not a test, Mike. It was the first combat intercept of that system. That system was tested and developed
right here
in PRMF at Kauai. Yeah. In fact, it was put on your island to defend the entire island from a North Korea ballistic launch that way. Yeah. That system performed last Friday night against the Houthi, who flew a medium-range ballistic missile into Abu Dhabi. It tracked it, it shot it down with a salvo.
That's amazing, isn't it?
And then this morning, it did it again.
Oh, jeez.
And took it out. It's a phenomenal system. It is deployed right now in Guam. It's protecting Guam today. Yeah. It is in South Korea today, defending South Korea. So it is, and we got a couple of them in the United States and go anywhere in the world at will, but the system works.
Okay, now, and that's what we've been talking about when I told you that Riki was going to be with us, because what's really, really important here is right now it's not your imagination or mine or Ricky's or anybody, but there are these little fires starting all over the globe. I mean, we are right now challenged just to keep a handle on how many cuckoos are out there trying to disrupt. We're trying to deal with this pandemic globally, right. And now we have to worry about some countries, North Korea, China, Russia, all these people. What are we doing with missile defense?
Well, I think that's
in Ukraine.
That's the commonality of all this. That's a poor man's way to project power.
Yeah.
So Ukraine and Russia are going to be drones, cruise missiles. I mean, Russia has the most sophisticated ballistic missiles and hypersonic, and that is there. That's happening. We've got to stabilize that region. And stabilizing that region is having capability that can defeat that capability so we don't escalate into an all-out war. That's important. Ukraine's got some capability, but nothing like our European partners over there.
You know, the last time you were here, you talked about numbers and how many incoming that we could put out based on what we had right now. We talked about that a little bit in Hawaii or in the Pacific area. Do we have intel, or do some of our partners have intel on just how many different modalities of launch that can be pointed at us?
Well,
with respect to like how many ICBMs do they have?
No, just the stuff that happened in Abu Dhabi today. I mean, they fired drones, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, rockets, all at the same time. So the volume there is tremendous on what. And that's a little small nation. That's not even, that's Iran back. Yeah. But if you start looking at North Korea, you're looking at Russia, you're looking at China, those numbers are ridiculous. It's not that we're not here to take missile for missile. We will never do that. We are here to change the calculus and take care of an accidental launch, an accidental ramp up of shots, to de-escalate and give us time to work this situation out, and we have to protect our forces forward.
Now, there's always been another consideration, and that the more advanced we get with our systems and all of these tests and all of these firings and all of these successes, some of our opponents that are strapped financially, but they're still trying to prove that they're tough by having all of this stuff. Wouldn't it make them change the kind of investing they have to do? All of a sudden figuring out, well, we have 20 of these, but heck, we put them up in the air.
I think, Mike, what you're pointing out is the cost curve, right? Yeah. We can't be shooting down $10,000 drones with $4 million missiles. That doesn't work.
That's not going to happen.
We've got 90 million interceptors trying to shoot down, a much cheaper long-range ballistic missile. We have to go to directed energy and electromagnetic capabilities that don't cost barely anything.
Now, remember
to change the cost curve. We're not there yet. We have to play with what we've got. What we've got is kinetic energy interceptors right now that have to be put in the field. We don't have enough of them. In Guam, we don't have them. Yeah. So, I mean, a full architecture, these things are happening, and the world's driving it. Just like you said in the beginning, we got Ukraine on the verge.
Right on the verge.
You've got Iran backing, firing missiles at UAE in Saudi. You've got North Korea launching stuff. This is all within the first 2 weeks of January of 2022.
If we go backwards, look at all the people that thought it was never going to happen in the Reagan days,
right?
In the Star Wars and everything else. They were way ahead of themselves. They even didn't know exactly what a hot potato they had in their hand. How much of that stuff is still being used today? You talked about kinetic energy. That's what I'm trying to get at. What you're talking about is
but look what Reagan did. I mean, back then, MDA, 20 years ago, they developed an airborne laser that shot missiles from a 747 and intercepted on boost phase. Yeah. I mean, we're good at this. We want to be good at it, but we took our eye off the ball. We didn't need to put our eye on the ball because it wasn't a threat. China and Russia were not threats for the last 20 years. We were focused on a very small, threat base that didn't have much sophistication in the Middle East. This is now upon us, and those vectors are coming in hard, and we've got to be able to balance both those.
One guy just wanted to know, is the THAADs that were given to by the UAE, do they sell them? I mean, did they buy them?
So 10 years ago, I think 2011, we signed a foreign agreement to give them that THAAD. That THAAD there is UAE-owned THAAD with UAE officers, Air Force officers, flying that. And that's the way we got to do, guys. We can't do this by ourselves.
No.
We got to have other countries. Japan needs to go in that direction. I mean, again, this is validation of THAAD is going to go to foreign partners, and the THAAD is an upper tier layer that's extremely high, and underneath it is the Patriot and the MSC missiles.
There's two things that people ask about, and I'm one of the people. And that is, I get it when you're talking about offensive strength. And we get together with all of our stakeholders, and we have this united front, which makes us the strongest military force.
But we're not integrated yet. We're not there yet. We don't have the trust there yet.
So the other side of it is, that's with people and assets. But what about the other countries understanding the value and necessity of defensive weapons, not offensive weapons?
That's what's happening. That's what you're seeing. Australia and Japan and this theater here are coming to us together to be able to put defensive capability in place. Because, Mike, it's going to be an accident. Yeah. It's going to be someone flying next to each other and bumping them, or a ship running into each other, and then escalation. Then someone's going to take a wild shot. You got to be able to de-escalate that right now. And you got to have capability in place that's going to defend it. But you've also got to discourage their ability to build up by having a defensive shield around your offensive capabilities.
Okay. Riki Ellison is the founder and CEO of the Missile Defense Advocacy Alliance. You want to Google them, and they got a great website. It's interactive. Get good stuff off it every day. And we're going to continue this discussion and put you into it if you like at 1-833-296-TALK. That's 1-833-296-8255. Here's Malin Moore with traffic. Be right back.
Want to join the conversation? Call us toll free. It's 1-833-296-TALK. That's 1-833-296-8255. Now, here's more of the Mike Buck Show on AM 690 and FM 94.3. The Answer.
Okay, so the deal is I'm here with Riki Ellison, and we talk about so much we need the station, we need the platform for about 12 hours. But one of the things that I think is always interesting is trying to explain, Riki, every time I talk about the missile defense, there's still many people that really don't understand the difference between all the stuff we have to go out and win a war with ammunition and with stuff, or what is it?
Well, we don't ever want to go to war.
No.
I mean, to start off.
To start.
Right? So you have to deter the other side from going to war.
Yeah.
And if you're not strong, that's going to increase them likelihood, if they want something, to go to war. So the key thing here is to be able to deter them. And the key thing for this specific region is to be able to defend our maneuvering forces in the first island chain and in the second island chain. So all those are vulnerable right now because China can strike those.
Back in the day, we were a very pivotal piece of real estate, right in the middle of the ocean. I mean, very, very valuable. That's why we got attacked in the first place. In the meantime, wars are not going to be fought like that anymore, in all likelihood. It's not the same number of ships and planes that are going to be...
Well, I think, Mike, there is some parallels to being fighting like that, because there's only little islands between you and getting to the Asia continent, and those islands are going to have to be one by one with air power
they can't help
and Navy power.
They need our help.
They need to be able to go to progress that. You're not going to... I don't think you're going to go there. But again, that's the fight, because China wants control of those little islands. So that's happening here, and this is not just a military strategy. It is both a diplomacy strategy and economic strategy that we're trying to go on status quo.
Let me tell you how right Riki is on this one. As you know, in our Go Fish program, we talk about this kind of stuff all the time, and these treaties that are being ignored by Russian and Chinese and Filipino and fleets of ships that take fish out of the ocean where there's controlled area. No way to defend it. No way to
They don't abide by those same rules that we abide by.
They're on the high seas doing what they want to do. In the meantime, that means that some of those islands that you're talking about, they might be little islands, but they bring in a lot of fish, and Russia needs to feed a lot of people.
Right. And it's strategic as well.
And so does China more.
It's strategic as well. And that's why our fleet and what we do in Indo-PACOM is to be able to patrol and keep those waters free and those islands and inner freeways, water, airways free.
Yeah, and you talked to her, for those of you that are just joining us, when Riki and I first started to talk, we talked about a headline today about a ballistic missile intercepted by the THAAD system over Abu Dhabi. And I was just sort of joking when I said Kauai had an awful lot to do with that. I think that there are those of you that are even on the Garden Island that don't understand what a contributor this is and how much has been done there in the past and what's it looking like in the future. From what I understand, they got some more grant money and they're going to be doing more stuff there.
In Kauai, Kauai, because again, we are first off and foremost protecting our U.S. homeland.
Yeah.
U.S. homeland is Hawaii. U.S. homeland is Guam. Mm-hmm. So defense architecture that we need to defend Guam is going to be practiced and developed to some extent here at PRMF. So that's a big deal. And again, who protects the homeland? The National Guard. So the National Guard is going to play a much more prominent role in the defense of our U.S. homeland on these islands, Guam and Hawaii.
This is an interesting one. This is from David. David says, please ask Riki if they have these interceptor missiles that work on the smaller stuff that you talked about, not just the big ICBMs. That's really good. I mean, what's available in a war?
Yeah. When we pulled out of Afghanistan, we used those. That's called the CRAM. Those are actually hundreds and hundreds of small projectiles that are $16 a round that can shoot down small rockets and mortars on that. So we have that capability. We have.
Is that something that you can take into the field with you?
That's it's for our forward operating bases. It's permanent. It's on the ships as well.
Okay.
So it's both a weapon. We are developing laser systems in some of our bases now to be able to shoot down those drones, and we have electronic jammers to drop the drones coming in. So we have a joint office back in the Pentagon that does it all to create that capability. I think we have 10 or 12 different types of systems to be able to handle that aspect of it. And you saw Abu Dhabi. I mean, the way to do this is there's no drone flying. So the city obviously has cut down anything that flies right now because of the threat on it.
When you say that, how do they enforce that?
They shoot anything down.
Yeah.
So if you're told to fly, you don't fly, else you get shot down, or eliminated on whatever mechanisms they have. But these aren't programs of record yet. We've got to evolve that so they're integrated across the joint, so they can do all of that aspect. That's what we're doing here. But if you look at this, you could have these great, $1 billion worth of aircraft on your airstrip, and they can fly a drone, a little $100 drone, or $1,000 drone, and drop a grenade and blow that. I mean, so that has to be defended. Yeah. You have to defend your bases. I'm glad you brought that up, because I've often heard this, and I've actually seen it. I was in a department store during the holidays and watching somebody shopping, and a father was looking at this drone with his kid, and literally they flew it in the store. The salesman said, and flew it around. So I thought to myself, if this is available for kids, one of the big guys. No, they're doing that already in the Middle East. They're putting grenades on them, and they're dropping the grenades off. Yeah. So I'm just telling you how vulnerable we are if we don't have a layered, and we can have all the expensive stuff for the big nuclear weapons, the hypersonic stuff, which we don't have yet, but you got to be able to defend your bases with your equipment.
So how does the battle go? And when I say battle, I mean that in a nice way. We do know that every branch is fighting for its money. Everybody needs to grant this and grant that. I think
it's the roles and responsibilities. We got to be much more clear on the roles and responsibilities of each service on each domain. We got a brand new service called the Space Force, and a lot of our global integration and sensors is going to be moved up to the Space Force. So those battles, I think, are coming with Congress, with this administration this year.
Yeah, and that's very, very important. And by the way, as we know here in Hawaii, because of the changes in the census and redistricting, and we are now having the entire local state Senate and the entire House of Representatives all up for election. It only happens once every 10 years, and that's because of reapportionment. How important is it for everybody on Kauai to be bringing to the people of Kauai and letting them know what an important part of the defense system that we have, and how they have to really work with each other for mutual benefit.
Our government's thinking this is so valuable, they're going to protect 170,000 citizens in Guam with a $1.5 billion, $2 billion capability. I mean, that's an island, so I don't understand why you're not next, why you're not getting the same thing. Once we prove it there, I'd be all over getting it here to give your force structure and your sound of peace. This is not just about North Korea anymore, everybody. China is playing in the game here, and their reunification of Taiwan is on their mind, and we've got two fronts coming, just like it was in the 40s. You've got Russia looking to take back some of its territory, and with that happening, you're seeing North Korea play up, and you're going to see a possible, run at Taiwan. So, we're in a tough situation right now.
Okay, let's look at some of the ways that we can get help for that. I do know that what you do, first of all, let's make sure that people understand that the MDAA, Your Baby, is a nonprofit, and it has been primarily developed with one thing in mind. That's to work with the government on what?
Making our nation and the world a safer place with defensive weapons, not the Department of Offense. I give a little love to the offense, but that's 98% of the budget. We're less than 2% of the budget.
And the whole reason, gang, here is we're 2% of the budget. And when Riki said that, he says that that's why we bring football into the thing, because it's a great analogy. It's nice that the guys can throw the ball, catch the ball, but the guys that can knock down the guy that's
the guys that don't let them score, you don't win. Look at this weekend. You don't score, you don't win. We just got to prevent them from scoring. That's the key to it.
Okay, now when you say that, one of the biggest problems has been between North and South Korea, and because of their interlocking borders, we do know that what happens there sort of sets the entire mood for the whole area.
But you got to look at Russia and China are sponsoring North Korea, right? There's no way these guys are creating. They're tested a hypersonic glide vehicle. They can't. They're like Ecuador if they don't have any nuclear weapons. There's no way they could do this. So they're getting their supply chain from China.
That's why
on that they've got a Russian booster. So they're also being used by China and Russia as a thorn in our side.
How quickly do we operate when we find out through intel or whatever thing?
Well, that's the key. The key thing for us is to get sensors to be able to see everything at all times. We don't have that yet. We can't see, persistent global with our cruise missile threat coming at it, with our hypersonic threat. That is the number one, because the key is getting that information artificial intelligence, machine learning, and giving it to your decision makers so they get that information quicker than the other guys, and then give it out to your effectors. Those
Quicker
are
is
the
better.
basic stuff that we got to do.
Speed is of the essence. We're going to prove that to you when we come back. Those of you that are trying to speed through traffic, good luck with that. It's almost 5:30. We got mail and more with that. And if you'd like to join us, it's 1-833-296-TALK. Say hello to Ricky or or the Mike Buck Show at gmail.com. More coming up.
Now, back to Mike on AM 690 and FM 94.3. The Answer.
Hey, so I'm just here hanging out with Riki Ellison. We're talking about a lot of stuff. Half the stuff I'd love to share with you, but you know, it's just time doesn't permit. But the interesting thing, and we started to ask a while ago, I need you to explain this a little bit more. We really talked lovingly and jokingly with Riki because of his football prowess. This guy was a heck of a football player and didn't play our kind of football until college days. I mean, and it's that simple. So I try to tell people that ask me, you actually came to America to go to USC for what?
To play football at USC.
Yeah.
I mean, I fell in love with the program. I fell in love with playing the game. And
When did you first become exposed to our way of football?
When I was 12.
Yeah.
And then I wrote on a piece of paper. I was so enamored. I wrote on a piece of paper that I would play for you. I never played football before. I'd play for USC, start, go to the Rose Bowl, win the national championship, marry USC cheerleader.
Every time I see them do in the opening segments of the show, they do, okay, here's the defense, and so-and-so Alabama, so-and-so Mississippi. Then somebody says, so-and-so Central High School. And, basically you got into a program that took you
I got
to the
exposed.
races.
So, my kind of adopted grandfather was a Sherman tank commander under General Patton on the 22nd Recon. So I had that exposure to me on that. And going into the university, I was on an engineering scholarship. I couldn't handle the load. It was too hard for me.
Yeah.
It was balancing both, and I got exposed to a missile defense discussion because the professor was Ronald Reagan's national security advisor during his presidential campaign.
Oh, for heaven's sake. See, I know Riki all these years. I never knew that.
So the critical academic thinking on missile defense started in 1980, 79, 1980, and this is with the big guys, Edward Teller, and they went to Cheyenne Mountain, President Reagan, or Governor Reagan then, and Bill Van Cleve, my professor, and they asked, where's the defense? Here's the offense, where's the defense? Yeah. And that's really where the spark came. And then I got a degree in international relations and a certificate program in defense and strategic studies there to go in. I heard Reagan's 1983 SDI speech. I was all ready to go in there, but I got drafted by Bill Walsh, not by the U.S. military. So I had to go to San Francisco.
That's why I laugh when I see these guys, these big bruisers saying so-and-so high school, because that must tell you they must be animals to have not played the sport and then get in at the highest level of it. And really that's what happened with you too.
It's rare, but what's so fun about this is that the same time frame we were in the height of a Cold War, and that missile defense initiative helped to break that Cold War and win the Cold War for the United States.
But the thing that interested me the most, gang, when I first met Riki, is here's a guy who virtually is thousands and thousands of miles from home, and it'd be a natural place to be at home. But you came here and sort of ended up being a dual dude, and your son blew everybody away. How's Red doing?
He's doing great. He's in New Jersey. On that, retired from from the COVID, but. That culture. Like I said, I'm from the Pacific, born in New Zealand. From that aspect of it. But going back to the missile defense, I did it during my off seasons when I was playing, and then 40 years later today, I brought that same program back to USC. So we for the first time ever in the world, we have a global space and defense program at USC. That first year is this year. I just flew in from their classes.
That's so exciting. And that wraps us right into another thing that I love getting caught up with. And I know the pandemic has slowed this down for a long time and a lot of other things. But this YIP, Youth in Peril, Youth Impact Program, YIP, has been another one of your babies that has taken wings. And I remember when it first came here and being a part of it and being down and seeing some of these faces. And from what I understand, a lot of these guys that didn't go on to play college football or anything else, turned out to be leaders and men. Must be very gratified to hear that kind of
stuff. This is great. I mean, that's that 7th, 8th, 9th grade boy and girl. Yeah. That's their trajectory change of life. We're dream makers for them. So we do this. One of our great programs is here at the University of Hawaii, and we're going to do it with the new coach here.
That's so
and
cool.
we're going to lead into that, but we're doing it at Utah. We're going to be doing it at USC. We're doing we're going to look at doing it at Notre Dame and Auburn.
But one thing that I got to tell you, gang, is how it works. And being involved in it for a little while with Riki now, and Chef Roy and Ron Cochi and a lot of other politicians, Mufi Anam, and many, many people that got together to help this out, is that a lot of times these young people, they think, wow, I'm so lucky because I get to go to UH and play football. And what's really happening is they do play. They'll throw a ball around for half an hour once or twice a week, but they're basically there to learn.
Yeah,
that's wonderful.
It's a STEM program. Yeah. It's 3 blocks of learning. We got the military in the classroom with the student athletes. We've got phenomenal results of increase of 20-30% math, science. So we are social change.
Yep.
We are social change here, and we've given them the access that they've never had. We've given them the trust into a institution which they don't normally have, and we propel their love of an academic area, and then we let them loose.
What's really cool about this gang is the way it's spread from place to place. It's been very eclectic. It's gone where you've gone, and we became a part of it a while ago. But right now, I don't know how you do it, but you manage to juggle all of these other things, and particularly at that time of the year with a lot of kids now.
It's important because that's America. It's where the great Americans, man. They make dreams happen. And so we've done 39 programs across this country, and we've affected 5,000 children that have changed their direction in their lives.
What's interesting is when these guys call you, and I got to talk. Roy Yamaguchi is the best example of it all. He saw this at the end, and he's part of a group of people that make culinary service and food and restaurants and cooking known internationally. Same thing happening. Look at him. He stepped right up and provides a venue, food, all that stuff.
When we got Trey Johnson, who's the director, we got Anthony Sperato right there, Sharon Brown. We've got community leaders, Ron, in this community because it's about this community. There's nothing outside about it. It's within the community.
I saw this one kid. I don't know if you remember a couple of years back, about 3 years ago. This one kid, I think he was, 14. But he had a foot size 14 or bigger.
Bigger. I think it was like 18, I think it was. Didn't have any shoes.
And this guy had no shoes. Yeah. And so what did he get out of that? I couldn't believe.
He cried.
He cried. And his face he had such a smile. I've never seen a smile like that.
In front of the whole group.
What happened to that kid? Big kid.
I'm sure he's going to high school, moving in the right way. We've got a lot of the kids that are so gifted from the program that have gone to Panaho and some of the academics. And we've got kids that have gone in and actually gotten scholarships academically. Some of them joined the military, and some of them, maybe one of the whole group would play football.
And so let me tell you what I always have gotten a kick out of, and hope to see it again soon, because obviously the pandemic has changed a lot of what we can and can't do, and that's coming back up. As a matter of fact, I know you're getting fired up for this summer. You're getting really ready to roll. But one of the things that I feel like standing guard, but you don't have to, because Riki has these 2 little neat display boxes of rings. And when we see these kids, between your college rings and your Super Bowl rings and all of these things, they just pick it up and you can see in their eyes. Wow.
They've fallen in love. They've got the grit. Most of them that are underprivileged have got tremendous grit and resilience.
But they're survivors. Look at them. Yeah.
But they haven't gotten the trust or the love from outside of their family unit, and to expose that propels their ability to go.
When you first got that going, I know that you have a wonderful way about you to get people to support because of your enthusiasm. How did you get that started? Because
I got it started in South Central Los Angeles at USC with Pete Carroll.
Yeah, there you go.
So we went in and we thought this was a place to be with the inner city, and that school took a shot
at me.
Huh? Yeah. No, I think we got a new replacement of that same type of guy. We went and paid for probably the best college coach in the game right now to get him out there.
It's unbelievable, by the way, and I know that you hear this. And we only have to have one talk about it because of Rhett experiencing it. The kind of money that got paid to professional athletes when you were playing and everything, it pales in comparison to what some of these guys get now. And I know people ask you that all the time. I don't mean how it feels. I mean, how can it demand that much money? Where does the money come from? And I always say it comes from television.
Yeah, it's a return on investment, but it's not about money because you're not relevant.
Yeah.
If you have a lot of money, what's your relevancy?
Yeah.
It's about doing something relevant.
Yeah.
And those guys like my son and a lot of the NFL players, they make all that money. They're at the top of the game, but they got to make a decision to be relevant or not be relevant in their lives to contribute back.
Our guest is Riki Ellison. It's not too late to join us. The MikeBuckShow@gmail.com. We're looking at that right now. We got a couple. We take a look at traffic and be right back after this.
Now, here's more of the Mike Buck Show on AM 690 and FM 94.3. The Answer.
Okay, so here's the deal. We're doing more talking off the air than we do on the air, and it's hard to do that. And I always tell you that there's a myriad of things that we can talk to Riki Ellison about. But at the end of the day, it comes back to his passion for working with our government as a nonprofit organization to make this place a safer place, period. And it's as simple as that. And we have more than a COVID threat. But I'm just wondering at how many things had to be, adjusted and changed over the last year and a half in what you do, because I do know that going in and out of things, and you put on more travel miles than anybody.
I've been through most of our states and seen how the different states reacted to the COVID policies and rules. So that's been very interesting on it. But, again, there is nothing like person to person safely to see the expressions on people's faces and to communicate. I think 70% of your language or your ability to communicate is through body language.
Yeah, I guess so too. It's hard. It's really hard. I mean, you can zoom this and zoom that, but it's just not the same.
And we did this last week. We honored the Missile Defenders of the Year from around the globe when we flew them in a safe environment.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
And there was nothing so special as doing that.
And by the way, I got to tell you, you went in Alaska. When you were in Alaska, there's apparently a guy up there from Hawaii. It's one of the service members, and I guess the father was listening to us when we were here, and he tried to call in. He couldn't get in. He tried to call in because he wanted to say, "Hey, my son's one of your guys. Did you see him?" And he said, "It is unbelievable how much these young people know and how dedicated they are to what they do." And I mean, you're a local boy from Hawaii going barefoot on the beach. It's not like living in Alaska, is it? It's a big difference.
And those two key bases that we are, the Clear with the big new radar, that looks like we're going to have that same kind of radar here in Hawaii, is in the middle, right next to the tallest mountain in the North American continent, looking out towards North Korea and China. And then 100 miles or down below that is our interceptors that are manned in probably one of the harshest conditions in our country.
They can light up. It's amazing.
We have National Guardsmen from Puerto Rico and Hawaii that are not used to that temperature, but it's.
But they do understand, and it takes a visit from somebody that hasn't been there. And I've been up at that part of the work since I worked in Alaska for a while. You're so close to them. You can see where they.
Well, no, but the recognition. I mean, the recognition is always for the offense. I'm used to this in football and other things. This is not a flashy thing. This is behind the scenes decision making.
Face to the grindstone.
And these kids, soldiers, boys and girls, I mean, men and women are doing. Look, they just saved Abu Dhabi. How many people live in Abu Dhabi? I mean, millions. I don't know, 10, 20 million people there?
At least.
And they saved the population here. And we're not talking about, I mean, it's amazing what these kids are doing around the world. And this is not killing anything. This is protecting.
There's a question that always comes up about that. It says, I cannot believe when you guys talk that how specifically quick we can react to something. And I still have no real idea, but you've explained it many times, and that is we have a system in most of the world can detect when something gets lit up, when something leaves the ground.
Because of the heat, because we have satellites that can pick up heat.
Tell me how
within
we can
5 seconds.
Tell me how we can look at the whole globe.
Well, we got to have more satellites up, right?
I should say.
And we've got certain satellites over certain areas, but we don't cover a lot of the areas of the Earth persistently, and that's where we've got to go, because that's where they're putting maneuvering platforms to launch things. That requires hundreds of satellites, and we're going to mix them with commercial and military satellites to be able to track that. But that all is put together in one big computer, right?
Yeah.
To
But
spit that out.
Does that matter how many people are there and what sort of property it is? Obviously, the financial capitals of the world, military bases of the world, they're probably high priority to protect. But when does it get to a point where, those guys are just a bunch of farmers out there, we don't have to worry about them?
No, I don't think that does, because these military bases, like in Abu Dhabi, are right next to the population centers, and we're going to defend that. Look at Switzerland. They bought the most sophisticated missile defense system in the world, and they're neutral.
Yeah,
but guess what? They have the biggest banks and the biggest money in the world. So
that's exactly why.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah. They're doing it. I mean, everybody's doing it. I mean, the weapon of choice is the poor man's weapon, which is missiles, drones that they can launch very cheaply and project power very powerfully. That's what we have to stop. That we have to break that, and you break that by having the technology to do it cheaper than they can do it.
And by the way, somebody asked off the air, and his name is Mark. Mark said, how big can drones get? I mean, we think of them as a little toy, but can't they get really big, almost as big as an airplane? I would imagine drone could be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, they're unmanned vehicles, and they're slow. Yeah, they're big, small, but they're easy. To
and
shoot.
Cheap.
They're easy to shoot down. I just want to say that, right? Big, small. They're not sophisticated. You can pick. If you can pick them up, you can take them out pretty quickly.
Would there be a way that they could be made capable of defending themselves? These drones.
Yeah, you would have some capacity, but then it defeats the cost curve of putting all that weight on to be able to defend it. Instead, it's cheaper just to have more of them.
But does it cost us when we're doing our budgets a lot of money on this equipment?
Well, let me just put you out to the harder question is we've got to defend our satellites.
Yeah.
We're not even talking about that, right? That's a maneuvering force. We've got...
Well, now we know there's people who can go up there and shoot down satellites.
That are way up there that are as much as aircraft carriers. They're vulnerable now. I mean, they've got Chinese and Russian small circling them. So that's a whole different type of warfare that we are seeing for the first time of that. And that's why we created the Space Force. And that's why we've got to be able to see what's going on up there. And then we're going to have some sort of kinetic and non-kinetic interceptors to deal with that. That's the fact.
Key. Okay, so
and when, on top of that. So
well, that begs the question to answer. We want to make sure we get this one answered, and that is, it requires a special commitment by in the armed forces, at the administration, at the state, at local level. They have to learn.
It's the core of our Constitution,
exactly.
Mike. Our tax dollars are paid in that to defend our freedoms, our people. Yeah. They have to defend it. I mean, and a lot of the defense philosophy over the last 200 years is offense. Yeah. I mean, I think we were, much more invested in building forts and coastal defenses 200 years ago than we are today.
But, we've been watching in the last several days and months, we've been watching this slow but certain buildup of forces globally, but specifically if you look at Ukraine. Because like you said before, it takes one mistake to do something silly.
But look at Ukraine. He's spent, I don't know, close to $1 billion maybe. I'm moving everything to that position. You think he's not going to use that? No, the investment they put in there is tremendous, and he's playing it. So yes, and there's got to be some lines drawn. It's a very serious thing here, and if that does happen, what are those lines?
You got to admit though, in the very beginning, the Ukrainians were saying, we don't need anything, we can take care of ourselves. And now they're saying, I think we need a little bit of help because they see this
Mike,
buildup.
they wanted to join NATO, right? Yeah. So we didn't decide to let them join NATO because NATO was everything to them. NATO would have pushed that decision,
to the next level,
right? If they were in NATO, I don't think Putin would be doing this. I don't think he could do this.
So and there are a lot of countries that were part of the former Soviet Union that you really don't know which way they'd go. That's why some of them have a problem.
Well, they all want to be with us.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, once you see a Ukraine, they take Ukraine. I mean, Estonia, all those countries are looking at that. I mean, what's to stop movement on that? And that's the same thing. That's the reunification of Russia is what he's trying to do. Reunification of China is what they're trying to do with Taiwan. So it is,
Isn't it interesting,
very
though?
Similar.
Isn't it sort of interesting, though, Ricky, when you take a look at geographically where some of these places are and know what assets they're sitting on, what natural resources they have, what oil they have, what some of the other things they have. It's not just we want your hills and mountains. We want everything. We want everything.
Yeah, I agree. But they're looking for more symbolism. within their own internal. They're looking for legacy.
Yeah.
They're looking for history for their nation state in doing something. They don't need to do this. They're not going to get oil and resources from taking over a little bit of Ukraine. This is not about that.
Not about assets, but there are, but flags go up.
Yeah,
it's starting to get worded.
They're going to watch the reaction.
Yeah.
Right? If NATO doesn't unify, they're going to keep going.
Yeah.
What's
next? In other words, what's after Ukraine?
And poor Poland, right?
Yeah.
What are the border states right now on Ukraine?
Yeah.
And this happens to Poland all the time. Yeah. So we got to stand. They've got to be able to come to terms with this.
Here's a guy that has no trouble getting out of bed in the morning and going like this 90 miles an hour for 12 hours, and then he takes a little bit of sleep. What brings you to town this time?
Well, I'm understanding the situation here in the Indo-Pacific. So I am meeting with that command. That's a big deal. Yeah. We've shifted. We're seeing where we're going to go with Guam on that defense of Hawaii. I'm also here to reestablish our youth impact program with a new coach here in the new facility.
Okay, and gang, what I want you to do is you have to understand when Ricky's boots on the ground with this stuff, you got to go and check it out. Check him out. Like I said, we told you from the very beginning, it's a nonprofit, and that means it doesn't make any money, but it sure is doing a bunch of good stuff. It's a missile defense advocacy.org. For more information, you do that. And YIP, let's talk. We have 30 seconds. The YIP.
Because it's social change, and we need to make the world and our communities better. And this is one way of doing it, and it is the best way, I think, that we think as a community to get up and give our next generation leadership capability.
Nice to have you back in town.
The world.
Nice to have you back in town, brother.
Aloha.
Also, our big thanks to Malin Moore, Leah Rodriguez, and certainly to our good friend Dr. Scott Miskovic about the COVID. We'll be back again tomorrow. You have your special night. You want to hear something on the program, jot it down on a $100 bill and stick it under my door. No, don't do that. Write me at themikebuckshow@gmail.com. Aloha. It's 6 o'clock. Have a good night. Aloha.